what if the data that actually built ChatGPT is already running out?
Which is a terrifying thought.
Right. I mean, welcome to a deep dive into the source material. We're really just looking at the exact moment Silicon Valley realized human words are, a finite resource.
Yeah, and the math behind the current AI boom simply stopped making sense.
Exactly. We're so thrilled you're here with us. Today, our mission is to perform this, a forensic autopsy of the daily news stack for April 28th, 2026.
And there's a lot to dig through today.
Oh, there is. The narrative screaming from these pages points to a massive industry collision. It's basically the great decentralization versus the old guard.
And we really have to approach this with a highly critical macroeconomic lens, because the traditional tech playbook...
The ones that built the last 2 decades of software.
Exactly. Those playbooks are breaking down in real time. I mean, the reality of 2026 is that the staggering physical cost of computing power is just destroying the very business models that got these companies to the top in the first place. Yeah, the era of cheap growth is over. What we are witnessing across this entire stack of sources is it's a desperate scramble for corporate survival.
Disguised as some grand philosophical evolution? Of course.
Oh, always.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the biggest shockwave in the data. OpenAI.
Right. The center of gravity.
For the last few years, they were the undisputed center of the tech universe. But looking at these internal numbers, they quietly missed their own primary growth goals for ChatGPT last year.
Which is huge.
It is. They never reached their target of 1 billion weekly active users.
And that is a catastrophic signal when you cross-reference it with their balance sheet. Because, OpenAI's chief financial officer, Sarah Friar, is actively warning the board that rising compute costs are just completely outrunning their incoming revenue.
They're burning cash.
Burning it at a rate that is terrifying for any traditional business metric. You have to understand the mechanics here. Training and running these models isn't like hosting a traditional web app.
Right, it's not just spinning up a server.
Exactly. Every single query burns electricity, water, and highly specialized silicon time.
And despite that bleeding balance sheet, CEO Sam Altman has committed roughly, this number is insane, roughly $600 billion to future data center spending.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to conceptualize.
$600 billion. He's framing this as a bet on compute scarcity.
Right.
But reading the boardroom tension in these sources, I mean, it genuinely looks like he is acting like a gambler doubling down at the casino.
Yeah. While
the directors are just staring at stagnating user growth and panicking.
Well, from a macroeconomic standpoint, Altman is treating compute the way Standard Oil treated refineries in the 19th century.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, he is viewing it as a finite natural resource, basically betting that whoever controls the core infrastructure controls the future economy.
That the math isn't mathing.
No, it's not. Not for a company that hasn't gone public yet. Your burn rate cannot outpace your user acquisition when you rely entirely on private funding. And this vulnerability is exactly why rival Anthropic has suddenly become this massive existential threat to them.
Oh man, the Forge Global data on that front is staggering.
It really is.
Anthropic has quietly passed OpenAI in secondary market valuation. They're trading at roughly $1 trillion.
$1 trillion. Well, OpenAI is sitting at what, 880 billion?
Exactly, 880 billion.
Furthermore, users on the prediction market Myriad are giving Anthropic a 64% chance of executing their IPO first.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, an IPO in this specific economic climate is a race for oxygen.
Just trying to breathe.
Right. The institutional capital looking to invest in pure play AI is vast, but it is not infinite.
Obviously.
So whoever goes public first absorbs the lion's share of that capital. OpenAI is watching its crown jewel status slip away, totally constrained by its massive cash burn and its incredibly tangled corporate alliances. Which perfectly explains why OpenAI is currently tearing up the floorboards to survive. I mean, under this massive financial pressure, they just broke their most sacred alliance.
The Microsoft partnership.
Yeah. It's fundamentally fractured.
Precisely. And this was the deal that defined the current AI era.
Total exclusivity.
But as of the amended agreement from October 2025, which is just now taking full effect, by the way, OpenAI can now offer its products to customers on any competing cloud provider.
Yeah, they are actively moving workloads to Amazon Bedrock.
Which is wild to see.
It is. Microsoft is still a partner, sure, but the absolute exclusivity on Azure is dead. And the financial mechanics of the deal have completely flipped.
Explain that part.
So Microsoft will no longer pay OpenAI a revenue share. Instead, OpenAI is going to continue paying Microsoft a capped percentage of their own revenue through 2030.
It is a clean, necessary break, but it's disguised as a natural evolution.
Right.
By settling the reported $50 billion lawsuit threat over that Amazon-OpenAI deal, OpenAI has essentially bought its freedom.
I love the quote from their chief revenue officer, Denise Dresser. She put it bluntly, saying they now get to date around in the cloud.
Which is a great way to put it. But from a structural standpoint, the most critical detail here isn't what they added to the contract, it's what they deleted.
Oh, yeah. They completely killed the AGI clause.
They had to. I mean, they really had no choice. The original agreement stated that Microsoft retained intellectual property rights and Azure exclusivity only until OpenAI achieved AGI.
Artificial General Intelligence.
Right.
I always thought that clause was the corporate equivalent of trying to underwrite insurance on a prophecy.
That's exactly what it was.
You're building a legally binding contract around a science fiction concept that nobody in the industry can even define, let alone measure.
It was a legal nightmare waiting to detonate. I mean, the contract literally required AGI to be verified by an independent expert panel.
Who even sits on that panel?
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of taking a company public. Institutional investors build valuation models based on predictable terminal value and cash flows.
You want stability.
You cannot execute an IPO with a clause that essentially tells Wall Street, hey, if a panel of judges decides we've invented a digital god, our biggest institutional investor suddenly loses all their access and rights.
Wall Street cannot price that risk.
At all. So they scrubbed it. Both companies' obligations now run on standard calendar dates. No more nebulous AGI triggers.
Wow. So they're clearing the decks for an IPO, plain and simple.
Yep.
But while they are meticulously untangling these corporate dependencies in the boardroom to appease Wall Street, they are fighting a literal war for their founding soul in a courtroom.
The timing is incredible.
It is. A 9-person jury was just seated for the Elon Musk versus OpenAI trial.
And Musk's core accusation strikes at the very foundation of the company's charter. I mean, he is arguing in court that OpenAI entirely abandoned its founding mission.
Which was to develop artificial intelligence strictly to benefit humanity.
Right. And he says they abandoned that in favor of chasing massive corporate profits and closed-source monopolies.
So the timing of the PR counteroffensive we are seeing in the sources is just, it's incredible. Right as jury selection begins, Sam Altman suddenly publishes this sweeping manifesto titled Our Principles.
No, of course.
He is loudly calling for the democratization of AI, arguing that superintelligence should be held in a decentralized way by the people, not controlled by a handful of massive companies.
What's fascinating here is the sheer cynicism of the timing.
It's so transparent.
You are sitting in a courtroom facing public accusations of monopolistic, profit-driven behavior, and the very same week, you release a thesis championing decentralized power.
It's echoing all down the ranks, too. I mean, OpenAI president Greg Brockman is suddenly quoted saying, AI can't be something that's done off in secret by one centralized group.
It's convenient.
And Andrej Karpathy is out there praising open source AI as a necessary balance of power. So what does this all mean? I'd really have to push back here. Is there any chance this push for democratization is a genuine philosophical stance? Or is this purely a highly calculated PR shield and IPO positioning tactic deployed precisely because Elon Musk is holding their feet to the fire?
Look, as a forensic strategist, I have to look strictly at the incentives.
Right.
When a company burning billions of dollars on proprietary compute suddenly champions giving power back to the people, it's rarely born of pure altruism.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is strategic positioning. They need to convince regulators, the Department of Justice, and the public that an independent, publicly traded OpenAI is a public good, not a monopoly.
Right.
But whether you view this as genuine philosophy or cynical PR, the reality on the ground is that all of these companies are struggling to balance their staggering compute burns with the immediate pressure to deploy AI safely and effectively for the enterprise.
When companies are burning billions on compute without hitting their ROI targets, deploying AI effectively isn't just about the model, it's about the management infrastructure. We want to thank our sponsor, AIRA, for making today's briefing possible. AIRA provides the enterprise-grade AI management platform that organizations actually need to turn raw compute into measurable workflow automation. You can find their link in the show notes.
And that painful transition from raw compute to actual sustainable workflow automation is exactly where the legacy tech giants, the old guard, are hitting a brick wall.
They really are.
While OpenAI attempts to pivot its narrative toward democratization, legacy hardware and software companies are just digging their heels into their existing walled gardens.
Which brings us to Apple.
Right.
They are hitting a physical ceiling.
Yeah.
Global smartphone growth has essentially stagnated.
Completely flatlined.
Yeah, we've reached total market saturation. I mean, everyone who wants a smartphone already has one. So, to keep Wall Street happy, Apple is executing a massive extraction strategy.
Tell them about the Ultra.
Yeah, so the sources show they are preparing to launch an Ultra branding tier by 2027. And this is designed to sit above their already expensive Pro lineup.
It's wild.
We're talking about a foldable iPhone Ultra and an OLED touchscreen MacBook Ultra.
This is the textbook definition of a defensive macroeconomic maneuver.
How so?
Well, when your total addressable market flatlines, you can no longer grow your user base.
Right. There are no new customers.
Exactly. Your only mathematical option to satisfy shareholders is to increase your average revenue per user.
ARPU.
Yes, ARPU. The Ultra tier isn't about pushing the boundaries of accessible technology. It's about creating artificial exclusivity to justify exorbitant price points to your most locked-in customers.
Right.
It is the exact antithesis of the decentralized future the AI labs are currently preaching.
It really is pure extraction. But if Apple is playing a defensive game on hardware, Google is fighting a massive, brutal two-front war on software.
Yeah, they are in a really tough spot.
They are facing an external regulatory battering ram and an internal mutiny.
Let's start with the external.
Externally, the European Union's Digital Markets Act is fundamentally dismantling their software advantage. The European Commission has officially ordered Google to open up the Android operating system so that rival AI services can compete on a level playing field.
We have to explain the mechanics of this because it's huge for the listener's daily life.
Absolutely.
Right now, if you use an Android phone, Google's Gemini AI hooks directly into the operating system kernel.
It's baked right in.
It gets system-level special treatment. It intercepts your voice commands and search intents before third-party apps even wake up.
Wow.
The EU is basically forcing a separation of church and state at the API level, saying, you are a gatekeeper, you cannot build a walled garden for your own AI.
Which totally neutralizes Google's single biggest advantage.
Yeah.
Default distribution.
Exactly. But arguably, the internal battle they are fighting is much more damaging to their structural stability.
Yeah, this was the most striking piece of the daily stack for me. Roughly 600 Google workers just signed an open letter to CEO Sundar Pichai.
600 employees.
Yeah, actively protesting internal talks that would let the Pentagon use Google's Gemini AI models in classified military settings.
This raises an important question about corporate governance, honestly.
Yeah.
And the actual leverage white-collar employees hold in the AI era?
Right, because they're the ones building it.
Exactly. The workers are meticulously arguing that the contract wording doesn't provide sufficient safeguards against the technology being utilized for kinetic warfare or mass unchecked surveillance.
I feel a profound empathy for these employees.
Absolutely.
If you look back to 2018, following the Project Maven protests, Google published these highly celebrated AI principles. They promised their staff they would never design or deploy AI for weapons.
And now?
Now you have 600 workers just trying to hold $1 trillion company to its own documented word.
Yeah.
And the contrast in the industry is stark. The sources note that Anthropic flat out refused similar Pentagon wording because they viewed it as a supply chain risk.
Right.
Even OpenAI recently had to revise a Pentagon deal to explicitly block the mass surveillance of U.S. persons.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it beautifully illustrates the desperate defense of the old guard.
How do you mean?
You have Apple relying on closed ecosystem hardware extraction, right? And Google potentially turning to massive classified military contracts to justify their AI compute investments.
All while going to war with their own engineering talent.
Exactly. It contrasts incredibly sharply with the democratization rhetoric we examined earlier. The legacy companies are trapped by the immense gravity of their own scale.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because while the old guard is fighting over smartphone tiers and military contracts, the actual foundational science of AI is threatening to completely bypass all of them.
You have to look at the data coming out of David Silver's new lab.
The former DeepMind researcher,
Yes.
the man who created AlphaGo, he just launched a new lab in London called Ineffable Intelligence. And it wasn't just a quiet launch. They raised $1.1 billion at a $5.1 billion valuation.
Huge numbers.
That is the largest seed round in European history.
And the technical methodology behind that valuation is what could upend this entire geopolitical chessboard.
Tell them why.
Up until this exact moment, the entire generative AI boom, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, has been built on large language models that require massive, almost incomprehensible amounts of human training data.
They scrape the open internet.
Right.
They ingest every book, every article, every Reddit comment we've ever written to learn how to predict the next word in a sentence.
But ineffable intelligence is completely skipping that pre-training phase.
Wait, really?
Yes. They are abandoning human data entirely. Instead, they are utilizing reinforcement learning, where AI agents learn purely from simulated experience.
Okay, wow.
Understand the mechanics. Instead of feeding an AI a million textbooks on how to play a game, you drop it into a blank digital sandbox with the rules, and you let it play itself a billion times until it invents strategies humans have never even conceived.
David Silver's analogy for this is brilliant. He called our human training data a kind of fossil fuel.
It's so accurate.
It's incredibly dirty, it's finite, and eventually you simply run out of it. We've essentially strip-mined the entire internet for text.
Yeah, we have.
But he calls his simulation approach a renewable fuel. It's an AI model that generates its own infinite training data within a sandbox. It can just learn and learn and learn forever.
This represents a monumental shift in computer science. It aligns perfectly with Yann LeCun's ongoing theory that traditional text-predicting LLMs might actually be a dead end for true intelligence.
A dead end.
Yeah. If the global supply of human data is genuinely exhausted, this reinforcement learning approach, what Silver is calling first contact with superintelligence, might completely bypass the massive $600 billion compute bottlenecks that are currently suffocating companies like OpenAI.
Because they don't need the massive scraping operations.
Exactly. You don't need to power a city-sized data center to scrape the internet if your AI is generating superior synthetic data entirely on its own.
It completely rewrites the economics of the industry.
It really does.
So, to synthesize everything we've unpacked today for you, the tech landscape you rely on is actively tearing itself apart.
Yeah.
You have OpenAI shedding its Microsoft exclusivity so it can sprint toward a Wall Street IPO while simultaneously deploying a cynical democratization PR shield to fight off Elon Musk in a courtroom.
Right.
You have Apple squeezing its saturated user base for more hardware revenue with Ultra devices. You have Google facing massive internal munis over Pentagon deals, while the EU dismantles its Android monopoly.
It's chaos.
And underneath all of that corporate warfare, the very data that built this era, our human words, our fossil fuel, is being abandoned in favor of pure simulation.
The enterprise software, the smartphones, and the applications you will use tomorrow are being aggressively reshaped by these macroeconomic wars today. It is a period of immense decentralization, driven not by altruistic philosophy, but by the sheer crushing gravity of economics.
Well said.
But there is one final, almost eerie thought from today's sources that we want to leave you with regarding how this technology is intersecting with our physical history.
Oh, the Pompeii reconstruction.
Exactly. Archaeologists just used AI for the very first time to digitally reconstruct the actual face of a man killed during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79.
Unbelievable.
They used his preserved skeletal remains and the spatial urban data of the ash to rebuild not just his face, but to simulate the exact physical choices he was making as he tried to flee the destruction.
Wow.
It is turning ancient history into a usable cinematic interface. But it leaves us with this provocative thought to mull over. If AI is now giving us the power to precisely reconstruct the lives and faces of people buried in volcanic ash 2,000 years ago, how will the superintelligences of the future, the ones trained on infinite synthetic data, reconstruct our digital footprints from this chaotic era?
Oh, wow.
When they look back at the digital ash of 2026, the lawsuits, the worker mutinies, the endless data scraping, what kind of faces will they rebuild for us?
That is a staggering thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We love unpacking these complexities with you.
Until next time, keep questioning the narrative.
Take care, everyone.